To win a war, one nation must have a large number of tanks, aircraft, and artillery, as well as a strong industry. It requires tons of resources and a load of money. But it also requires men of courage. Men whose courage and perseverance win out on the battlefield during those turning points that change the course of war. Major David Vivian Currie of the Canadian South Alberta Regiment was one such soldier. On August 18, 1944, Major Currie led 200 men and a dozen M4 Sherman tanks into the town of St. Lambert-sur-Dives in order to block the escape route of the German 7th Army out of the Falaise Pocket. Despite being vastly outnumbered by a detachment of the German 2nd Panzer Division, the actions that Currie and his men took effectively sealed off the only escape route for the Germans. Currie was awarded the Victoria Cross, the highest military gallantry decoration in the British Commonwealth, for his efforts. David Currie was born in Sutherland, Saskatchewan, on the 8th of July 1912. He was educated at King George Public School, the Central Collegiate, and Moose Jaw Technical School. He was trained as an automobile mechanic and welder. In 1939, he joined the militia, before joining the regular army the following year. David Currie was commissioned as a lieutenant in the regiment, having all the qualities of a good officer, and mechanic skills that were ideal for an armored unit. He was quickly promoted to captain. He was promoted to major in August 1943, after demonstrating excellent command skills. David Currie's 29th Armored Regiment, as an armored unit, did not take part in the Normandy landings on June 6, 1944. The regiment arrived in France 7 weeks later, on July 24. By that point, German resistance had been fierce, and Allied forces had come to the conclusion that the Battle of Normandy would take longer than they had anticipated. Major Currie and his comrades were called into action, just as the American 1st and 3rd Armies launched an offensive in southern Normandy, to encircle the German 7th Army and 5th Panzer Army south of Caen. The British 2nd Army and the Canadian 1st Army both launched simultaneous attacks from the north. Hitler rejected the possibility of a withdrawal, in spite of the protests of all German field commanders, particularly Field Marshal von Kluge. Instead, he directed his men to counterattack the enemy on all fronts. Because of this situation, the Allies were able to completely encircle the Germans by closing the pocket at Falaise. Canadian troops played a crucial role in achieving this goal. The 2nd Canadian Corps was to launch Operation Totalize, in order to breach the German defense north of Falaise, while American and British troops kept pressure on Germans inside the gap. Despite heavy casualties, 4 Canadian divisions were eventually able to break through German lines, and continue their rally toward Falaise. During the Battle of Falaise, between the 18th to the 20th of August 1944, Major Currie was in command of a small mixed force of tanks, self-propelled anti-tank guns, and infantry, which had been ordered to cut off one of the Germans' main escape routes. Currie and his men had less than 2 weeks of combat experience on that day, and they were up against battle-hardened Germans, their powerful 88mm POC 43 anti-tank guns, and Tiger tanks. The Canadian force was held back by strong enemy resistance in the village of St. Lambert-sur-Dives, and 2 tanks were destroyed by 88mm guns. At last light, Major Currie immediately entered the village on foot by himself, through the enemy outposts to scout the German defenses, and free the crews of the damaged tanks, which he was able to do despite heavy mortar fire. Major Currie personally led an attack on the village early the next morning, despite fierce opposition from enemy tanks, guns, and infantry, and by noon had succeeded in seizing and consolidating a position halfway inside the village. The Germans launched counterattack after counterattack against the Canadian force over the next 36 hours, but Major Currie had so expertly organized his defensive position that these attacks were repulsed with heavy casualties to the enemy after fierce fighting. On one occasion, he personally directed his command tank's fire on a Tiger tank that was harassing his position, and succeeded in knocking it out. During another attack, he used a rifle from the turret to deal with individual snipers, who had infiltrated to within 50 yards of his headquarters, while the guns of his command tank were taking on other targets at longer ranges. The only time reinforcements were able to reach his force, he himself led the 40 men forward into their positions, and explained the significance of their role in the defense. When the new reinforcements withdrew under the intense fire of the enemy during the next attack, he personally collected them and led them forward into position, where they held for the remainder of the battle, inspired by his leadership. His use of artillery support, which became available after his initial attack, was typical of his cool assessment of the risks involved in any situation. Despite the fact that short rounds were falling within 15 yards of his own tank, he ordered medium artillery fire to continue, because of the disastrous effect it was having on the attacking enemy in his immediate vicinity. Major Currie's force suffered heavy casualties throughout the operation. However, he never considered the possibility of failure, or allowed it to enter the minds of his men. "We knew at one point that it was going to be a fight to the finish, but he was so cool about it, it was impossible for us to get excited," said one of his non-commissioned officers. Major Currie had virtually no respite from his duties, because all of the officers under his command were killed or wounded during the action, and he only got 1 hour of sleep during the entire period. Nonetheless, he did not show his fatigue to his troops, and took every opportunity to visit weapon pits and other defensive posts to talk to his men, advise them on the best use of their weapons, and cheer them on with words of encouragement. The Germans attempted a final assault on the Canadian positions at dusk on August 20th, but the attacking force was routed before it could even be deployed. 7 enemy tanks, 12 88mm guns, and 40 vehicles were destroyed, and 300 Germans were killed, 500 were injured, and 2,100 were captured. Major Currie instantly ordered an attack and completed the village's capture, denying the escape route to the remnants of 2 German armies, cut off in the Falaise Pocket. Major Currie's gallant conduct and disregard for danger set a fabulous example to all ranks of the force under his command, over 3 days and nights of fierce fighting. The village of St. Lambert-sur-Dives was taken, and the Falaise Gap was closed, trapping 50,000 German soldiers with no way out. The Battle of Normandy had concluded. David Currie had only gotten 1 hour of sleep in the last few days. He fell asleep on his feet after everything was over. There is no doubt that this officer's coolness, inspired leadership, and skillful use of the limited weapons at his disposal contributed significantly to the success of the attack on and stand against the enemy at St. Lambert-sur-Dives. The bravery and devotion to duty shown by Major Currie during a prolonged period of heavy fighting were outstanding, and had a far-reaching effect on the successful outcome of the battle. Despite becoming a hero, Major Currie continued to fight the Germans in the Netherlands and northern Germany. He received the Victoria Cross on November 30, 1944, in recognition of the bravery and devotion he displayed throughout the period. David Currie rose to the rank of lieutenant colonel before retiring from the military, and serving as sergeant-at-arms in the House of Commons, from 1960 to 1978. He He passed away in 1986. If you have enjoyed the video, please subscribe and support the channel for more. Many thanks for watching.